Lawyers of Reddit. What is the dumbest thing your client has done to ruin a case? Story 1. I was on a jury where the defendant showed up on the first day of court wearing the exact same outfit as the unknown suspect in the video of the crime. It took only a few seconds before the judge immediately called a stoppage. All the lawyers went into the back with the judge, and they came out about 7 minutes later to announce that the defendant had taken the plea deal. Wild. Story 2. My client was being sued and didn't like the opposing counsel or the judge, so he left them a bunch of voicemails so profane that he ended up facing a criminal contempt of court hearing. Story 3. Not my client, but the petitioner attorney's client. The man filed a workers' compensation claim and threw everything at us, basically listing just over half of his body parts on the claim petition, stating that he had injured each one. He was completely full of it, and my firm knew it. Anyway, we were heading to trial, and the day before, we ran one last social media search. This absolute idiot had posted a video of himself winning a breakdancing competition just a few months after the alleged work incident. I've never seen a case get dismissed faster in my life. Story 4. Not an attorney, but one client of ours still baffles me to this day. He had multiple cases, including aggravated battery and drug possession. At his family's insistence, we moved heaven and earth to get him a bond so he could get out of jail and stay with them until his case was over. The whole process took weeks. Less than a day after being released, he was caught stealing $16 worth of batteries from Target. Bond revoked. To be fair, the line between stupidity and compulsion is pretty blurred with this one. Story 5. My wife's lawyer now bans all clients from using social media after losing a big case. It was a wrongful death lawsuit where a man's wife had been killed, an easy win. They were about to settle until the other side found pictures of him online at a club just a week after his wife died, getting a lap dance while wearing a shirt that said, "I love MILFs." Apparently, they didn't think he was experiencing much pain and suffering anymore. Story 6. My client added 9 years to what was supposed to be a short sentence. He originally got a year or 2 for participating in a drag race where the other driver crashed and severely injured someone. Then, toward the end of his short prison term, he tried to escape, earning himself an additional 9 years for prison escape. He later became friends with John Lennon's killer in a New York prison, which was interesting. Story 7. Not a lawyer, but I heard this story from a guy I used to work with. His brother-in-law got injured at work and was suing for a hefty sum. The case was pretty much open and shut. All the evidence was in his favor until he started talking. They asked him to describe the day of the accident. He started out fine until he got to the part where he approached the piece of equipment that injured him. He then admitted that there was a note on it stating it was out of order. And what did he do? He removed the note, started up the malfunctioning equipment anyway, and got injured because he had a job to get done. That easy win was thrown out faster than that out of order sign. Story 8. Not me, but a colleague. A wealthy client's son was arrested for drug dealing at a local music festival. The client bailed him out and hired an expensive law firm to defend him. When the son showed up to court, he was completely stoned and, to make things worse, loudly tried to buy drugs from the bailiff. At that point, there wasn't much the lawyers could do. Story 9. My client was part of a group of active pedophiles. One of the others killed a boy while several were involved in physically abusing him. My client's defense was that he was just a voyeur. He admitted to being there, but claimed he wasn't involved in the actual murder. He remained out on bail throughout the trial until he suddenly changed his story, now claiming he hadn't been there at all. Unfortunately for him, his own sister testified that he had come home that night covered in blood. He got a very, very long sentence. Story 10. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. My client was arrested for DUI in a small town where he and his wife lived. Their usual routine was to drive to the one bar in town, drink, and then walk a short distance, about a quarter mile, to their houseboat afterward. One night, they were at the bar when another patron they knew got completely wasted. The bar owner said she couldn't stay there, so my client and his wife walked her to her car to wait for a ride. My client, also drunk, helped her into the back seat of her SUV. As he walked around to the front seat, he dropped his keys. He then opened the now unlocked driver's side door and turned on the car lights to see, right as the cops were watching the bar for drunk drivers. They saw the lights, assumed he had been driving, and immediately arrested him. He had a prior DUI from 12 years ago, but the judge ruled it wouldn't be brought up unless he opened the door during his testimony. The only way to win the case was for him to testify, so I prepped him extensively, drilling into him that under no circumstances should he say anything about never driving drunk or anything related to the past. Direct examination was going well. I gave him a perfect last question where he could explain the situation and why he was upset about being arrested, since he wasn't actually driving. And then, he says it. I would never do something like that. Door open. The judge immediately allowed the DA to bring up his old DUI on rebuttal. The jury took about 25 minutes to convict him. And that's just one of 100 stories. Life is never dull in criminal defense. Story 11. I'm not a lawyer, and this isn't my story, but the lawyer who handled my business matters in a legal dispute is now a federal judge. Before becoming a judge, he worked in divorce and civil law. One of his wealthy male clients filed for divorce. There was a prenup, and it was airtight. It outlined the division of assets and specific alimony terms, set at a fixed amount, increasing annually with inflation. However, there was one major clause. If either spouse was caught cheating, defined as any sexual contact before the divorce was finalized, they would automatically get the worst terms of the prenup. If the wife cheated, she would receive zero alimony and a one-time payment of $100,000. If the husband cheated, he would lose the primary family home, all cars except his daily driver, and 1/4 of his business, with a buyout option available, though it's irrelevant to this story. The lawyer gets to court, meets his client in a conference room, and the client is absolutely beaming. He shakes the lawyer's hand and proudly announces, "Hey Mike, I want you to meet Jasmine. I met her 2 months ago. She's amazing. We got engaged over the weekend in France." Mike shakes her hand, slumps into his chair, and says, "So, we've got a major problem. You are cheating on your wife with her. And legally, this is discovery I'm required to hand over to the other side." The client flips out. "How the I am I cheating? We're separated." Mike replies, "Cheating is defined in your prenup as any sexual contact before the divorce is final. You wrote that clause yourself." The client loses his mind, gets so angry that he ditches court, resulting in a default judgment. This meant his wife got everything she asked for. Plus, due to the cheating and his failure to appear, the judge ordered that all money transfers be completed within 30 days. Since he wasn't there to contest it, boom, case closed. Then he made it worse. He tried to hide his company by transferring it to the new woman via a trust, illegal move. He also transferred $1.1 million to her. But once the judge found out, she was ordered to return the money since she had been legally notified. He fought for years and ended up losing money, time, energy, his business, house, 6 or 7 cars, and his new wife. Now, I know his daughter from work. He's a bitter, retired man living in rural New Mexico. He can't afford to golf more than once a month, and he spends his time posting online about how women are scum. Story 12. I had a domestic violence case that we had been preparing for months. We attended preparatory hearings, gathered evidence, and even obtained restraining orders. Finally, the trial day arrived, and that very morning, my client casually informed me that she had gone on vacation with the defendant for a couple of weeks and had a fantastic time. Right after that, opposing counsel approached me and told me they had plenty of evidence showing both parties enjoying themselves together during the trip. Now, this didn't mean abuse hadn't happened in the past, but it completely undermined our case, especially since we had very little evidence beyond testimonials. At that point, I had to explain to my client that, even beyond strict legal rules, the judge was likely to change their perspective after seeing that the claimant had been out partying with the very person she had requested a restraining order against. We settled and avoided trial altogether. Story 13. Not a lawyer, but I was raised by one. My dad did criminal defense for over 30 years in Texas before taking a position with the DA. Here are some good ones. Capital murder case. My dad persuaded the DA to waive the death penalty. The jury ended up acquitting on the murder charge but convicting on aggravated robbery, sentencing the defendant to 45 years. The defendant's family was tied to the Mexican mafia, and they all wore Mickey Mouse shirts to court. equals Mexican mafia. The DA was pissed about the outcome. My dad was proud of that win. Surprise confession mid-trial. Halfway through the trial, the defendant's brother took the stand and confessed to the murder, completely out of nowhere. Turns out, the brothers had planned this in advance, without my dad's knowledge, of course. Nobody but their mother believed the story. The jury convicted the original defendant, and the brother was later indicted for aggravated perjury. Client disappeared mid-trial. My dad was defending someone on a robbery charge. The client showed up on the first day of trial, but vanished on the second. The judge was like, well, the show must go on. So my dad had to defend an empty chair. The jury felt sorry for him, but it didn't help much. A few days later, the client was picked up in Oklahoma. Turns out, he had robbed a bank, then tried to buy plane tickets to Hawaii. His master plan? Once in Hawaii, he was going to steal a boat and disappear. Didn't quite work out. The absolute worst? A client chose to represent himself on a murder charge. It was horrific. My dad, ordered by the judge to act as standby counsel, had to literally stand at the back of the courtroom and watch the disaster unfold. The client was completely insane and botched everything. The jury gave him life. Later, the appellate court overturned the conviction and sent it back for a new trial. This time, the client wisely opted for actual legal representation. He got 40 years instead. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.